Hello, I'm Mr. Felix and welcome to our coil pot making tutorial. In this video, we'll guide you through the step-by-step process of creating beautiful and unique coil pots. Whether you're a beginner or have some experience with pottery, this tutorial is designed to help you master the basics and explore your creativity. Coil pot making is one of the oldest and most versatile techniques. It involves rolling out long snake-like coils of clay and stacking them to build up the walls of your pot. This method allows for endless possibilities in terms of shapes, sizes, and designs, making it a favorite among potters of all skill levels. In this tutorial, we'll cover materials and tools, what you'll need to get started, preparing the clay, how to properly wedge and condition of your clay, creating coils, techniques for rolling out even coils, building the pot, methods for stacking and joining coils, smoothing and finishing, tips for refining the surface and adding final touches. So by the end of this tutorial, you'll have a solid understanding of the coil pot making techniques and beautiful handmade pot to show for it. So grab your clay and tools and let's get started on this exciting pottery journey. The first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to take some clay. You're going to want to use your wire tool to cut it out. Make sure you put the bag back in place. I like to use a clip to keep it moist, and then set the bag to the side. And then we want to wedge the clay to try to keep air bubbles from building up inside. And then we make kind of a hot dog shape with that piece, and we start rolling. You want to keep your fingers apart so that it's even across. So the weight is distributed even across the whole piece and it stays round. If you happen to start getting too long, you can cut it by using a tool. This is a rib. You just cut it halfway, set this to the side. I have here a piece of plastic where I like to keep my clay wet, and I'll use a spray bottle to keep it wet to the side, and then I'll just work on one piece. Again, keeping my fingers spread. As I'm rolling, I'm pulling apart so that it stretches the clay as needed. If you start seeing some cracks, what I like to do is just spray a little bit of water. Now you can hear that it's a little bit off balance. It's not round anymore. So what happens, what I'll do is I'll just start twisting it a little bit, kind of like dough, and then it'll return to a round shape. So I continue to put a little bit of water to keep it moist, and I will continue to make my coils. Now again, as I mentioned before, my plastic is up here, and I will just set my coils under that plastic, and I will spray those coils to keep them wet. Now we're stretching out this clay. We're making our coils to make our base. Our base can be made in a couple of different ways. One of the ways, actually I already have pre-made coils here, but one of the other ways that we can make the base that I'll show you, if we don't want to make the base out of coils, we could just flatten it with our palm like so, right? This is one way to make the base of our pot. And then you take a cylinder shape like this, and you use your needle tool. Here's the needle tool, and you can cut around, and you can have a perfect circle, right? The other way you can make it is to have a cookie cutter. I have a cookie cutter here that will also make the same shape. I also have a rolling pin here. What I like to use with the rolling pin is I will have a rag here to make sure that it's uniform as far as thickness. And usually the thickness that I'll make here, with same thing with the coils, is, and I forgot to mention it, is about the thickness of my pinky. So if my pinky is about that thick, that's about the thickness of my coils, maybe a little bit thicker. But that's also going to be the same thickness as my base. So here's one way to make the base with my cookie cutter. So why work harder, right? So I can make a base there, right? So now that's the base to one of my pots. The other way to make the base using a coil is I can start off my coil, instead of cutting straight flat like so, with my coils, I'm always going to cut at an angle instead of flat, because there's more surface space when I connect them, and you'll see in a minute. So what I'm going to do with this, I'm going to start my coil to make the base like so, and this is going to be the beginning of the base of my coil. This is why they call it coil pot, right? Because everything is made out of coils. Now, one thing you're going to have to keep in mind with clay is that everything is not going to get done in the first day. So on this part right here at the end, we're just going to smooth it out. Now when your clay starts to get dry, a little dry, remember, keep that spray bottle handy. And when you're working with coils, all the clay is going to dry, so you're going to want to blend everything in together. So one of the sides, you could choose to do both sides, or you could choose to do one side. So that way, one side is going to remain looking like coils, and the other side is going to look flat. Or you can do both sides to look flat. Now this tool is just a piece of wood. You can use a popsicle stick if you'd like. This is a needle tool, right? This is a carving tool. It carves. As you can see, it just pulls off pieces of clay. And then this is a scoring tool, which you'll see in a minute. It looks like a fork. You can use a fork. Some of these ribs will have teeth, like a comb. And this can also be used to smooth out. So they're pretty basic tools that you can buy in a kit. Now the other side of this will look like so. So now you have two versions of bottoms. And if you want to smooth this out, add a little bit of water, right? Smooth it out. Just like so. So now if I was going to, now that I have these other pieces here that I've laid out before, I'm going to start building my pot. In order to add coils to my pot, I'm going to need to score this, as I mentioned before. So around the edge, I'm going to score all this edge with my scoring tool. And the reason we're scoring is because the clay will shrink. And so when the clay shrinks and these two pieces of clay, these clay bodies, what happens when they shrink, I'm going to measure this around and I'm going to make my coils like this. So right when these two meet, I can either use this to cut, or I can use this to cut, or there's a palette knife. But instead of cutting straight across, I'm going to cut at an angle. And so, as I mentioned before, see, here's my sign right here, my indentation. So I'm going to take this off, put this under here with water again so it doesn't dry out. Now I can bring this off and cut it better on the table. If I cut at an angle, I have more surface space here. And so what I'll do is I'll score this here on both sides. And what this does, it creates a mechanical bond. So when these two are attached, they will actually grip together like lock. They will interlock under next to each other. If I use two ends like here, like this, without anything, when the clay bodies shrink, they will detach because there's nothing holding them together. But if you have little fingers per se that are interlocking, they will actually prevent each other from spreading apart. So that's what this is doing. It's creating a mechanical bond. And what I'll do is I'll add some slip to this. And with the slip, here's what slip looks like. Slip is basically clay with water. And so what I'll do is I'll add some slip to join these two. And everywhere where I scored, and then I'll also score the top of this where I'm joining this. So I will also have to score my coil all the way around where I'm going to join the bottom of my coil pot with the bottom with my coils. So I will add this slip right to and again, as I mentioned before, slip is basically just clay with water. It's kind of like potter's glue. And this creates the bond, or like the glue, that will glue my pot together, my coils to my base. There we go. Now we will attach these two. We'll attach my rings. Now what I like to do here is I like to smooth out my joints to make it seamless. And instead of just building the coils up and then smoothing out the inside of my pot, I also like to start smoothing out the inside now before my pot gets too big, and then I can't join them. I can't smooth out the inside because my fingers get stuck, or I start damaging the inside of my pot. So I will go ahead and smooth all of the inside, and then we're going to start adding coils here shortly. Okay, we're ready to add our second link. So I've already joined them together. So now I'm going to score the top, or I'm sorry, I'm going to score the areas where I'm going to join. So I'm going to join these two rings to make my coil. The other option you could do is you could also just keep coiling them on top, making a spiral. Just spiral it all the way up. Again, I'm scoring, and then I'm gonna add my slip, and I'm gonna continue this process all the way up. Adding slip to both sides. Now, one other option you can use, I press firmly. One other option you can use to also join, instead of pressing like I did before, you can also add small strips in between the coils and then press those in with your thumb or your fingers. Press them in to seal the gaps in between. What this is going to allow is basically make your coil pot waterproof, or it's going to seal the cracks. So you just keep pushing those areas in, and it's going to make your coil pot watertight. That way it doesn't have any leaks, as well as the glaze. Once we also glaze it, it's going to make it watertight as well. And all you do is make smaller coils for that. All right, now that I got about 3 rings into it, what I like to do is I like to get one of these little turntables. Makes it easier for me to rotate it as I work on it. So what I'm doing is I'm just getting some clay, and I'm working in these small, either the coils, or I just like to make these small coils and work them in here. Again, working in that clay. But you can also take that rib and smooth it in as you go, so that you're working it in and you're smoothing as you go, so you don't, when it gets bigger, it gets more difficult to get that smoothness in there. That way most of your work is done. You could also use your tools to smooth it out. You want to make sure you also cup the outside of your vessel while you're working, so it doesn't stretch out on you too much. So I'm just going to keep working on this, making it taller, then I'll come back. So once you've stacked all your rings, all your coils on top of each other, you're going to come back, you're going to grab some water and a sponge, and you're going to kind of not finish it exactly, but you're going to start to smooth it all out. So try to give it a kind of a cleaning, if you will. So clean the sides, smooth out the inside. Everything on the inside should be smoothed out, because we were going in there and we were smoothing it all out with our thumb. This sponge will help. What you want to do with the sponge is, it's kind of like a sandpaper. What you want to do is you want to soak the sponge. You want to rinse out all the water, and you want to go around your vessel, around your pot. And the sand and the sponge will work like a sandpaper, if you will. And what it'll do, it will collect all the loose clay. And what you want to do is you want to just smooth it all out and give it a smooth finish, like a cleaning, if you will. And then you want to remove all this. So what you want to do is soak it again, rinse it out, and have a clean sponge every time you go back in, because this is what's going to ensure that your projects have a smooth finish, and it's going to prepare your vessel or your project for the glazing process, which is going to be the next process after this. So once you're ready for your pot to be glazed, once you get prepared for that, so make sure the inside is going to be completely smooth for the next step. And that's how you get your pot ready for the glazing process. All these dry cracks All these dry cracks will be smoothed out, as you can see. The process is just coming along right there, right in front of your eyes. It's coming, and see how it clogs the pores. So you want to make sure you have a clean sponge every time. And dry. Make sure it's not wet. If it's too wet, the clay becomes sticky and unworkable. So one thing that will happen, and I will caution you once you're cleaning this stuff, is your pot will sometimes open too much. So one thing that your clay does have is called a memory. And what you can do is just put it back on your turntable here, and you can start squeezing it back to shape so that it closes back to itself. And that way you're ready for that finishing process. Go back with your sponge once you get it back to that shape you want. Just finish it, and you're ready for the next process. But there you have it. We're ready for glaze. That is the end of our video. I hope you had fun. I had fun doing this. So we'll see you next time.